One.
Hi, my name is Zaya, and this is our Feudalistic Network. Today we're going to discuss the effects of feudalism on Western Europe and Japan, comparing the similarities and differences between political systems, social hierarchy, and economic activities. Our first guest of today will be McKenzie, a political major on post-classical society. Let's welcome her.
Hi, thanks for having me.
No problem. All right, let's get right down to it. So, can you explain how feudalism affected political structures?
Feudalism affected the political structures in so many ways. First off, it separated each of the cities into these smaller units of land control. They weren't mainly focused on one single and central government. It was more of an independent unit. Like this unit right here is controlling this amount of land. It wasn't so much that they had one king that had to look over the entire territory by himself.
Oh, that makes sense. So sort of like how the army works, how every platoon has their own little part, and then beyond the platoon is smaller units as well.
Right, yeah, little units just broken apart.
Great. So can we go into more detail about hereditary class systems?
Yeah, the hereditary class systems were very simple yet complex at the same time. The class that you were born into was the class that you pretty much stayed at. There wasn't much room for change once feudalism came into effect. That if you were a warrior, you were born a warrior, you stayed in the warrior class. If you were a noble, you stayed in the noble class. If you were an artisan, you stayed in that class, or if you were a serf, you stayed in that class. Again, there wasn't that room for change.
Great. So we're talking about warriors. So how important were the warriors to each country as a whole?
They were very important. They were on the up and coming during the feudalistic times. There was always, the nobles were always the number one, top row, top ranking of each of the societies, Japan and Western Europe. But the warriors were beginning to grow in strength and in numbers, and the people were beginning to look to warriors as nobles, as people who could give them advice and tell them what to do and command them and lead them in the right direction like they had been so prompt on the nobility to do.
So like really all of our warriors technically became like mentors to the people. Like they were protectors, they were mentors to the lower class and the serfs and everyone else.
Right. Technically they were the nobility of that time. They could have been classified in the noble class.
Okay. Well, thank you for giving us so much political insight on the Western Europe and Japanese societies. Okay, so our next guest today is Matthew, a social document analyst. Let's welcome him.
Hello.
Hey, how are you?
How are you?
All right, let's get right down to business.
Okay.
What were the differences regarding the treatment of women?
So, in Japanese feudal times, the women were considered warriors. They were expected to go out onto the battle scene and fight with the other men. They were even, at a certain limit, expected to give their life in return for honor. Regarding the women in European feudal times, they mostly stayed at the home or in the castle. They were expected to practice fine arts, and they didn't really contribute so much to the outside world. They were mostly kept inside. Even to a certain extent, they were considered delicate flowers, and they did not do any kind of hard labor or any kind of hard work.
Alrighty. Okay, so what about the responsibilities given to warriors?
The responsibilities given to warriors differed greatly between the two civilizations. In Japanese feudal times, the warriors practiced poetry and calligraphy. They were expected to have a certain knowledge of art and how to implement it into their life. Warriors in European feudal times were a little more. They were illiterate. They did not appreciate the fine art. They were mostly focused on battling, sword fighting, jousting, and more physical sports.
So like the boy versus girl sort of, I guess, stereotype.
Yes, exactly, yes.
Alright, so and finally, what were the similarities and differences between the philosophies between the two?
Just like what we mentioned before, the philosophies vary greatly. In Japan, the feudal system was mostly powered through Confucianism. There was a mutual respect between the warriors and the serfs. Respect went both ways, and it was expected that the warriors treated the serfs with respect, and the serfs treated the warriors with respect. Considering the practice of the beliefs around death, they were very different. In Japan, they died to preserve their honor. To a certain extent, they even committed suicide so that they would be remembered with honor and respect. In European feudal times, death was discouraged, and so was suicide. It did not contribute to their respect or to their honor.
Thank you. So our next question would be, what are the major differences between the European feudal system and the Japanese feudal system?
Major differences would be like I mentioned, the respect between the higher classes and the lower classes, so the warriors and the serfs. In European feudal times, the relationship between the two was considered a contract. So the lord simply provided for them, and in turn, they were expected to do everything he needed. And sometimes that led to abuse of the people and unrealistic expectations, and that may have ultimately became a revolt. So yeah.
All right. Thank you, Matthew, for providing us a social intellect of the European and Japanese feudal system.
No problem. It was fun.
All right. So our next and our final guest today is Jake, our economic specialist. Let's welcome him. Hi.
Hi, it's very nice to be here.
Great. So let's go ahead and get started. So, what were the similarities of mannerism, the creation of guilds, and the growth of trade?
Well, we see in both areas, both Western Europe and Japan, we see the startup of a manorialism system where nobles or landlords or wealthy people in general would have large estates that they would hire serfs and peasants to come work, where they would work their land, grow crops, do whatever they need to do, and then give a portion of what they earn to the landlord each year for letting them work on his land or live on their land at all.
It's like a circle. It's like kind of like a circle of payment. Like you work for me, and in return,
Yes.
I'll provide you with a place to stay, like protection. Okay. So I mean that seems like a cool deal, right? So what was the main activity in both Western European and Japanese societies?
Well, see at the very beginning, we see the manorialism system, where it's primarily agriculture that dominates the economy. Most people are just farming for sustenance, and some are going into artisan activities such as like pottery, weaving, stuff like that. Mostly we see agriculture until some technological innovations appear in Europe is from Asia, in Japan is from China specifically. We see technological innovations like the mold board that increase production quite a bit. And so we see more production, more profits, more money, more circulation in the economy. And that prompts some serfs to be able to change from just agriculture and farmer standpoint into more artisan-based, maybe some potters or maybe some weavers of some sort, maybe some bakers or something that kind of climbed up on the economic ladder from just lowly farmer peasants to more like specialized jobs.
So what you were pretty much saying was going from our agriculture like dominating our economic force. Now we've got with technological advances with like now there's more specialized jobs. So now there's more parts and more niches for the entire like economy as a whole, which is increasing and boosting the economy. That's great. Okay, so our last question for you is: what is mannerism's effect on serfs and peasants?
Not only from an economic standpoint, but from also kind of a social standpoint, it kept them like down below many of the already established nobles and higher merchants and people with more power. We see that they're kept on the nobles' lands, and they can make as much as they want, but they also have to give a certain amount to the noble or the landlord, which kind of decreases their ability to get more money and gain more power as just peasants.
Well, I mean, yeah, because if you're like, no matter how much I give, I still have to give the same amount. It's like it's not a motivation. I don't feel like that would be a motivational force to make you want to work harder and make you want to do more, because you're going to get the same amount every time. So what's the point of doing more?
Exactly.
All right, so our final question for today is, what are the similarities of the creation of guilds and trade growth?
Well, we see in both Western Europe and Japan, with the growing, the economic boom that happened as a result of the technological innovations that boost production, we see more people, more serfs becoming artisans. And with that, there's more production of artisan goods, like manufactured products, that we see that can be, and the excess manufactured products can be traded, and therefore a growth of trade, and the merchants become very powerful, very wealthy individuals in both economic systems, and along with the increased amount of artisans, like in Europe and Japan alike, you see they form guilds, and they kind of band together to kind of protect each other and to make things even, and to kind of discourage monopolization of a certain trade.
Okay, so pretty much you go from agriculture to technological advances, and then going from there, we get the increase of fine arts, things like pottery, and which ultimately, in the end, increases our growth, our trade growth, which ultimately makes our economy way better as a whole in the country.
Yes, correct.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for giving us an economical insight on this. It was great having you.
Thanks. It's fun to be on here.
Awesome. We've had quite a great show today, haven't we? In review, let's summarize what we learned about the feudalistic systems between Western Europe and Japan. McKenzie informed us that the political systems were very similar, both with secular governments ruled by hereditary class systems. Matthew introduced us to very different social characteristics. In Japan, we see that women are becoming more part of the respected warrior class, whereas in Western Europe societies, we see women secluded to home with little or no freedom as delicate flyers, we may say. Lastly, Jake introduced us to economical of both places. With technological advances in this time, agricultural dependence decreased and both economies of the systems boomed. This helped raise social statuses of the lower classes. I hope you all enjoyed this segment this week. Have a great weekend and happy holidays. We'll see you next Monday to discuss the rise of the Renaissance.